But really what I want to talk to you guys a lot about is branding. What is branding? Anybody, take a stab at it. What is branding? It's not when you take a cattle prod and, brand the cows, because I heard someone say that once before. I'm like, no, that's not the idea of branding. Anybody, what is branding to you? What does it mean? Anybody? Creating your look. I love that. So what do all these things have in common here? Very recognizable. You know exactly what they mean when you see the name, right? It's an iconic idea in what's going on. But how do we take this to what we do? Because that's the most important thing. So the question I have for you, and I want you guys to write this down. What is your brand? Write this down. Because we're going to show you how to take this to a whole different level today. So what is your brand? I really want you guys to think about that as we move through this process, and we're going to really break these colors down. So what is your brand, and what does that mean? I want to break down a little bit of what we do for Logix. Obviously, that's where I come from. So I want to show you a little bit of how we brand stuff, and what does that mean. So how do we brand Logix? We brand it with events, trends, products. So with the Logix culture, the biggest thing we really start to look at is our trends, our iConcepts education, our brand of the culture of Logix, the events, the shows, and really sharing our salon culture with everyone that's involved. So what we do in our iConcepts education system, and what this is icon is the art genres that we look at. The concept part is simply how we execute in what we do, and that's how we came up with the name iConcept. So this is our brand of education. And inside of that brand of education, we have pure, progressive, and uncensored. And really what those break down to is a classic approach to hair, a contemporary approach to hair, which is, I think, a lot where we live in the salon, and also, uncensored, which is very much that couture, edgy bit that we do in the salon. That really isn't the mainstream for most of our clients, but we do have a few of those that we can definitely step into that with. So as we start to move through this, we've done 3 collections this year. This is just a little bit of a sample of what they look like. So with this year, we're working with Art Deco. So when we do this, we take an art genre, we look at the elements of the art genre, and then we push that forward with being able to brand that and take it to not just the salons, but the shows, our imagery, our trends, and everything involved for the entire year. So with Art Deco, it's very fashion forward. It was between the 20s and 40s. The fashion was very drapey, very gauzy. And also then we look into jewelry. This is when there wasn't a lot of money that was involved, because this is the Depression era. So jewelry started to come into a lot more costume jewelry, big chunky elements of what was happening. And then we get into furniture. It's very modern, very streamlined. And of course, architecture with the repeating motifs. So it really breaks down to glamour, modernism, and function. And with that, finger waves and the bob. This is when we had the bob show up again in history. We see it in the Egyptian era, we see it in the 20s and 40s again, and then we saw it again with Sassoon. Now the difference of when Sassoon really got tagged with it is because press and PR was so different in the 60s and 70s than what it was obviously in the 20s and 40s. So it's important to recognize that this is something that has evolved, and obviously we wanted to bring it forth. So this is what the trends look like for the 3. So again, taking something from where it was in the art genres and really moving it forward. Again, keeping that brand, that identity of what we're doing with the Logix brand. So again, we work in pure, progressive, uncensored. We usually do 1 haircut, 1 color, 3 styles. And so here's the pure, progressive, and uncensored looks in the 3. And here's our beautiful blonde. And our lovely redhead. So what is this, how do we take this to the events? Well, we take it, we brand it, we make sure that you see the same imagery and not just trend, you see it in what we're doing at the events, you see it in the looks that are going on, such as the shows. My silliness there, right? Well, you guys got to lighten up a little bit. It's so serious. We're just talking about some hair. It's like a little bit of color, a little bit of hair. So serious today. So you can see the same models. So those 3 models, that's not the trend models, but those are the ones we were pushing across the stage. So you can see it's consistent all the way through, which is important. In other words, it's giving everybody the idea in what we're doing so that then the team as a whole can drive this. And then obviously it's got to go back to the salon. Is it a technique that can we use? Is it a technique we can make money with? Because while we love the beautiful models of something very creative and avant-garde, we've got to be able to make money with it, and we've got to be able to take it back to the salon and gift that to our clients. So with that idea, I want to ask you, what is your brand? So from a classic idea of pure, a progressive idea of contemporary, and an uncensored idea of very artistic and couture, what I want you to think about is what is your brand within inside of those 3. Okay? I want you to write that down. So how do others perceive your brand? I want you to write this one down, because this is interesting. We perceive it one way. How do other people perceive your brand? Have you ever asked somebody that has come into the salon, what do you think of the salon? What did you think about what we're doing in here? I think feedback is so key. And I wouldn't do it with somebody that's your friend that, 20 years you've been doing their hair, because they're going to lie to you, tell you everything you want to know, right? What you want to do is take a new client and ask them, what did you think of your experience? And I'm a salon educational director in Salt Lake City as well. And one of the things we always really pride ourselves on is there's a system in what we do. And I'm sure all of you have that same type of idea. The client comes in, if it's a new client, they have a specific cape, so everybody comes around, make sure that they're very well recognized and very well taken care of. Let them know we're here for them. But, you know, that shouldn't stop after the first time. There should be something that's consistent, and we should be consulting with them every single time. So when they come in, the one thing we always like to find out is, how did you come here? How did you find us? And what did you think of the experience? Because that tells us what we need to do better and how we're going to grow. Also, what do you want your brand to be? Because, you know, if you perceive it one way, somebody else perceives it another, what do you want that brand to be? What do you want to be known for? Do you want to be known for very avant-garde creative color? Do you want to be known for very commercial color? And it's really understanding, how do we get that? How do we get that to be implemented out there? And then how do you create the identity for you and your salons? This is the other question I really want you to think about. And then we're going to move through and start talking about some color. So I just want you to get these 3 questions down, and then we're going to start to answer these as we get through the end of the show. Has everybody got those? We're good? Moving on? Moving on. So let's talk about this fusion collection. And if I can get my gentleman to bring up my little chemistry set here, we're going to make some chemistry happen. But fusion was really about creating a melting state. So when I started to think about this, and I'm going to show you a mood board in just a second, but let's break this down. And this is literally right out of the dictionary. So a liquid or melted state, the merging of different elements into a union. You know, you talk about music that fuses, jazz fusion, jazz rock, and of course we think about food. You know, we see a lot of the Asian fusion and a lot of the foods that fuse together in different cultures. So fusion lives everywhere. It's how we look at it, and it's how we're perceiving it. So this is the mood board that I started to create, and when I looked at this, the one thing I started to notice is that these are like iconic brands that are still using the idea of fusion. And here we have, up on the left, you see the shoes that have the melting of the colors. This is a Prada shoe. You have a Vans shoe. You see the Google emblem that they're using that same idea. You have the iPhone, which obviously everybody is way into, the iPods, and so on and so forth. So you see the art, you see the different elements of what's going on, but you also see this happening in advertising, and they're very much using this element to be able to really create something different, a point of difference that we see consistently moving throughout the industry, and not just in our industry. So when I started to look at this, I thought, how do we incorporate this? And then when I started thinking about NAHA, I'm like, how do we take and melt 2 canvases in the same idea? So that was really the intent, the idea behind it, is making it look like it literally melted off of her head and onto her body. Now, here's the polarity to that. You think you're really cool when you get done, and the pictures are great. We put them up on Facebook after we got in the finals. And, you know, Facebook is so good because people don't know everything about you. Some days you think you're like a big deal, and then other days you get really sorted out real quick. So I had this lady, and she saw this picture. Obviously, somebody had posted it up, and she commented. She says, "It looks like they forgot to use a cape." I thought, brilliant. Brilliant. So it's perception, you guys. I mean, it's absolutely perception on how we perceive what we're doing. But, you know, the idea with it is just to really take this. So this is the end result of our NAHA girls. And, again, I think great end result. Definitely something that I was very proud to put forth. You know, you can see the Logix logo on the back, and this is something that we really wanted to implement. The one thing that I really loved was really putting like a green tone with a red tone. Completely complementary. They do not go in the same head together. They cancel each other out. And then you see the purple with the yellow, and it's the same idea. Is really putting contrasting colors that as a whole, in harmony, they work together. But normally when we think of those two, those are just not combinations we would put together. So that was really the intent behind it. I'm just going to show you, yeah, and then we had that wonderful thing that happened. It's pretty wild, right? One of those amazing days you go, did I really have that happen? And, you know, I don't know if you guys are like me, but I got up in the morning and peeked out the door and went, it's still here. And then I had to go look and say, oh my God, and it still has my name on it. I actually didn't steal that from somebody last night. So this is the models before, and here's her after. So we're working on a very, very light idea. You can see that she's dark at the new growth, and everything is base shaded. I'm going to talk heavily to that when we break these models down, but everything is base shaded. So in other words, what we're looking to create is a hyper shine line. If you think of where hair color hits, the shine line where the light hits the hair, that's really the idea, is really implementing the tones in there. So at the new growth, everything inside of the new growth has the same base as what's on the underneath inside of every foil. So it literally captures that dark element, so it creates that shine line. If you think about putting black and white together, they're very contrasting, but they also really make each other pop. In other words, when you put something dark next to something light, it's going to enhance that. And your eye is always drawn to the light. So when we look at creating a shine line, naturally that's where your eye is going to be drawn to. So this is the pattern that we worked with, and I was literally just working a rectangle section over the top of the head. Everything from the parietal ridge down was done with our base shade, and it's about 21 foils. So while it looks like a lot of work, it was an extreme amount of work. I'm kidding. It's 21 foils. It's not a hard technique. So very much living right on top of the head, parietal to parietal, at the crown, and everything forward. Starting in the back, we're just working that entire thing forward. Where you see the lines fusing from light into an orange, we're fusing two colors inside of one strand. Okay? So that's the idea with our lovely girl here. Boy, man, she did a nice change, didn't she? A little great before. So again, just working off the same pattern. You see the different purple tones laid next right to the yellow tones. And again, it was really about creating something that was a point of difference, working with complementary colors that really would cancel each other out. And the question I always get is, how did you rinse this? And the answer is carefully. Ice cold water, you guys. Ice cold water, and I always want to rinse the darkest first, so that you're getting a lot of that heavy pigment. If you think about our darkest pigments in our color, the darker we go, the more pigment load is in the color tube. So if I rinse everything on the dark first, and then literally peel each foil one by one, and make sure that everything is getting all the pigment off, then it allows me to really create high energy colors, but still not having everything, you know, being convoluted and bleeding together. So this is the pattern here. And this young lady, she's a dancer. She wanted to do something extremely different, and I happened to catch her on the right day. So we did a very dramatic change with her. And here's her pattern as well. So again, working with purple tones, a couple different yellows, and obviously a palette of greens. So let's talk a little bit about our first lovely model. Let's have Katie. So this is the pattern. And what I'm going to do, instead of breaking down and doing it with foil, I'm going to show you a pattern visually here. And if I can have my little cart with some colors. Because I know you can see it on the screen, but I know it's a little harder to see tone. So who was watching the Bears games last night? How'd they do? Hey, listen, I'm a Dallas Cowboys fan, so we really can't even bring that up. They're not doing too hot. All right, so my lovely little food coloring. Now, my chemistry teacher kicked me out of class when I was in high school because I mixed too many things and wanted to blow the chemistry lab up. So I'm sure that they would probably be rolling over in his, I'm sure he's dead by now because I'm a lot older than what I look. But no, honestly, it was one of those things that you go, how did I get kicked out of chemistry, and now how do I do hair color and mix all this stuff with chemistry? I love it. It's brilliant. So here's the pattern, and what I'm going to do is we're going to work from the one side. We're going to start in the back. Can I have that shot back up? Yeah, it's not really good about looking at me. So actually, I got the wrong one there. Let me go back. Let me take you to there. That looks a little more like you. I was like, that's way too many colors in your hair. So we're going to start from the back, and we're going to work forward. So the first thing we did is we put a very dark green, and I'm going to tell you formulas here in just a minute. The next thing we did is we worked into a yellow. Now, this pattern repeats itself 3 times. We're starting from the back, and what I did was I split her horizontally. Let me just turn you here. Ooh, you're even dry. It's a beautiful thing. So we split her horseshoe section. Everything here was done on a horizontal. Now, the difference of what I did from the NAHA models that won to what we're doing here is if you think about the pattern laying very horizontal on top of the head, it's going to make it very strong in its placement. What I wanted to do with these girls is I wanted it to become very linear, so you could see the color striations as they move forward. So as we turn her, you can start to see all these colors. Instead of laying this way, now we're taking them to pattern across the head so that we're creating that high energy, again, that shine line, but now you can see the striation of color of what's going on as it moves forward. So the pattern, dark green, yellow, a light green, we're going into a blue, we're going back to a light green, we're going to a yellow, we're going